You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney prior to and during questioning. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. You understand your rights? Warning. Each episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast, will contain descriptions of acts of violence or of a sexual nature and are for people that are 18 years or older. Heed my warning, people. I do not get the facts of these cases off the internet or from some television show. These facts I'm retelling were presented to me by the victims of the crime or the perpetrators who committed the crimes. My descriptions of the crime scenes are what I saw with my own two eyes. If you are going to get offended, turn this podcast off now. Thank you. Hello, everybody. And before we get started on today's episode, I need to take care of a couple things. And y'all stay tuned at the end of the episode for some Patron shoutouts and announcements about the podcast awards and different things, and two more podcast promos we're doing with some friends for Real Life, Real Crime. The first thing I want to talk to you about is a survey. I have to announce the survey. Libsyn is the company that we use that hosts our podcast, and they want us to do a survey. So if you do it, it'd be great. If you don't, that's okay too. But the link to the survey will be posted in our show notes. So it's http://survey.libsyn.com/real life, real crime. And again, that'll be listed in our show notes for today, y'all. If you want to fill out that survey for us, it would help us. Second, I want to talk to you about a really cool podcast, true crime podcast, but totally opposite of what we do. And it's Wine and Crime, and it's hosted by Amanda, Kenyon, and Lucy, three ladies with the Minnesota accents. And y'all, let me introduce you to them now.
Hey, true crime fans. Have you listened to Wine and Crime yet?
We're a true crime comedy podcast hosted by three childhood friends who chug wine, chat true crime, and unleash our worst Minnesotan accents.
Each week, us gals pick a true crime topic and pair it with a delicious wine before delving into the background and psychology behind the crime.
Then we share and speculate wildly about a couple of bonkers cases related to the topic.
Past episodes include necrophilia, cults, crimes of passion, cruise ship disappearances, exorcisms gone wrong, all this over a bottle of wine, or, let's be real, 3.
Listen anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Wine and Crime Pod, and check out our website and blog at wineandcrimepodcast.com.
Cheers!
And there you have it, Wine and Crime. And these ladies are selling out concert halls all across America. People are eating it up. They're funny. It's entertaining. Check them out. Like, subscribe, and go to the social media and let them know that Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast sent you. And let's get started with today's episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Woody Overton. And today, we're going to be continuing the series, at least 2 parts. We'll just have to see how long it goes, but it is on state ground. And I have with me my brother from another mother, Jim, the Hitman Rathmann.
Thank you for having me back.
Thank you for doing it. I know that the listeners loved and ate up our story last week, but we kind of left with a cliffhanger. And just to recap real quick, we're working a homicide, and Jim called on Carol Ann Bailey, who was strangled to death. And at this point in the case, we just really found out who she was. And Jim has located some immediate family members in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we're going to make the death notification. So go ahead, Jim, tell us what happened.
Yeah, so we went ahead and contacted Woody, let him know that the mother of Carol Ann Bailey resided there in Baton Rouge, gave him that address. So Woody drove over there and met me there. And when we got there, you're talking about an old lady in a little apartment. It was real small.
Like a one bedroom.
And
kind of in right on the borderline of the hood off of Boulevard, the province. Baton Rouge is straight hood now. But at the time, it was transitioning, kind of a poor area. And we got there. It was an older apartment complex, and she was on the first floor. And we knock on the door, and you tell them what happened, Jim.
So we went ahead and knocked on the door, and she invited us in.
She's a real sweet lady.
Real sweet lady. And you know that you're about to deliver them the worst news of their lives. And so you have to handle that with a whole bunch of care and concern and heartfelt. And, of course, when we show up there, she's wanting to know right away what's going on. Okay. But, we went ahead and...
Yeah, you have two detectives knocking on your door, and they have the badge on their belt and the gun on their side. Of course, we always wore coat and ties. We didn't have uniforms. We were plain clothes. But, you can imagine, right, that when she opens the door and say, "Hey, I'm Detective Overton, this is Detective Rathmann, and we'd like to talk to you for a minute." And I guess in her mind, she knew sugar was about to turn to shit. Go ahead, Joe.
That's a good way to put it. So, I had her sit down on this recliner. That's what she usually sat in. She had her little throw over that, and, you could tell it was her chair. So
you get pictures of just a little old lady's one-bedroom apartment. I think she probably spent her days watching television, and she was pretty old, right?
She was pretty old, probably in her late 70s, early 80s.
I was going to say about in her late 70s, yeah. So,
and, we sat her down, and what I ended up doing at that point was I took a knee in front of her, and I grabbed her hand, and I delivered the message to her and let her know, I'm sorry to inform you of this information, but your daughter, Carol Ann, was found deceased, and they've been on the news recently. And, she immediately started crying, and obviously she's very emotional, upset. So at that point, we just continue to try to provide some sort of comfort.
You just do what you can do on her, right? Each one of them is different, and Jim is very good at it, and he's holding her hand and then hugging on her, and she's, "Oh no, my baby. And, it's tough, right? I'm a dad. Jim's a dad, and shit, I just couldn't imagine. At the same time, I'm hoping, damn, I would just lay down and stroke out on us or something, right?
Right.
But she was really upset, rightfully so. But Jim is very good at it. And what do you do? What do you do and what do you say? And of course, after a few minutes of crying, then inevitably the questions come, what happened?
Which is exactly what ended up happening. She asked what had happened, and we started to explain what we could. And her daughter, she had another daughter that showed up at the house.
Right. But when you first, I think right before you told her, you said, is there anybody
you want to contact to have there as a support channel? Just, we can only provide so much comfort. And although we have no problem doing the best that we can, we will bring a chaplain or somebody if we can as well, typically. Just provide something. But if they have somebody, they know somebody that, another family member, it's a little bit easier, so to speak. It's never easy, but a little bit easier at least to hear that news.
Right.
So that's actually what she had done. She had called her daughter when we first got there. And then when her daughter showed up, her daughter had just walked in and went ahead and broke the news to her, and there was some crying that was going on, and they wanted to know what happened. And when we started to explain what had happened, the would-be Carol Ann Bailey's sister immediately started yelling out that it's her boyfriend.
Yeah.
Her boyfriend did this. And so even though I'm on a knee trying to hold her hand and provide comfort, I'm using my other hand to start writing down notes on everything that the sister's saying, because she's just spitting out information left and right.
Right. Where the mom was really consumed with the grief part, the sister flashed out with the anger, and she was pissed. And she would, I know it, that motherfucker killed her. I know he killed her. Da, 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 da. But go ahead.
Yeah, and it just shows you the difference of emotions that some people have. Some are angry and immediately lash out. Others will cry for a little while and grieve. But when the sister was going through that, it was helping Woody and I out tremendously. Then she gave us the name of Russell Gross. And Russell Gross was dating Carol Ann for, I think they were dating for a few months. Was it a few months?
Yeah.
Longer than that. They were together for a little while, and he resided in Denham Springs. And what's crazy about this is that Russell Gross actually came from a really good family. His father was a retired bus driver for the city of Denham Springs. The mother was also a retired city worker as well. You know, they provided the best they could for their family. They had a house there in Denham Springs that had a little bit of land.
Right.
And what they did for Russell, because Russell has had some trouble growing up. I do remember when we looked into him, he was already a registered sex offender for a crime that happened back in 1990.
Right.
So he had some trouble. The parents had put a trailer on the back of their property for him to be able to stay in, which we're going to get to that.
Right. The parents, Russell's a black man, African American, and I think you called it in. Once we got his name, we called it in and had him run it, and that's when it came back. He was a sex offender. And one of the other detectives in the office, Detective Calvin Bowden, who's still there, and he's a great guy, super smart. And he's actually a polygraph examiner now also. But y'all have heard me talk about Calvin before. Calvin knew the family, right?
Calvin knew the family very well. What was good about that, and what makes good detectives, it's about a team. A lot of times it's that team effort, and you have to rely on the strengths that other people have.
Right.
And in this particular case, Calvin had a relationship already with the family, had a good rapport with them. So it made it a little bit easier for being able to get access to who we needed to speak with and get some information because of that relationship that Calvin had with the family.
Right. And so the sister gave us the information on Russell, and we wrapped up the notification with the mom and the sister, and Jim got all the information we could on Russell. Go ahead.
Actually, one thing I want to mention too, in the middle of her rambling off that Russell did this, I know he did it, with her curse words and whatnot she was throwing out there at the time. We asked her specifically, do you know what kind of vehicle he drives? And she said he has a little red pickup truck.
Boom.
And right there, Woody and I looked at each other and we knew game on.
Yeah. Hey, I knew we weren't going to Beaumont.
So we finished up the death notification, and now it's time to really get into it.
Yeah.
So we drove back to Livingston Parish, contacted Calvin, Stan Carpenter, and we got our little team of detectives together. And the plan that Woody and I came up with was actually, I thought it was phenomenal the way that we were able to pull this off.
Yeah.
So Woody and I actually split up into two different ways. So I actually went to the residence first. Of course, Calvin was there with us.
Right.
You want to?
Yeah, Calvin and you went, and I think Calvin actually rode on the bus for years or whatever with the dad.
With the dad.
And that's how you knew him. And so, I mean, he knew him since he was a little boy, right? And Calvin goes over and makes an introduction and
He did.
got some base information that Russell had a roommate.
Yeah, so Calvin went over there and was talking with the father. It was determined that Russell was staying in that trailer behind the house and had a roommate. Also, Calvin was able to determine that Russell was not currently there at the moment when Calvin was talking with the father. He was going to be on his way back from work.
That's right.
And would be home shortly. So Calvin actually left the property to wait for Russell to pull in. And then at that particular time, I showed up at the scene, made contact with Russell. A group of us did actually, and asked him to come back to the detective's office, so we can question him on what was going on, which he agreed to.
And his parents had confirmed also, not only did he have a roommate, but Carol Ann Bailey was living with him at that residence. So we got that confirmed. It wasn't just the sister's word. I think the parents said they hadn't seen her since like Friday or something like that. I don't remember. It had been a couple of days.
It had been a few days. They hadn't seen her. So the plan was to have Russell come back with me and another detective. I don't know if it was Chuck Watts or who was with me at
Probably
that
Chuck.
time.
Chuck's all about a homicide. He had to be
So, yeah, he was. Homicide Chuck.
Homicide Chuck. He loved to work a homicide. But
the plan was to get Russell back to the detective's office. What was also critically important in this was the roommate. So we waited till we got a few minutes down the road. I then contacted Woody and just let him know about where we were so they would be able to go onto the property and pick up the roommate to bring to the detective's office as well.
Right.
So that way Russell did not know that the roommate was there.
Yeah. And like you said, this was pre-planned and we didn't want them to have a chance to get any story straight. We didn't know if the roommate was in on it or even if Russell did it at this point. But the strategy was to, first of all, not have Russell be comfortable in his own environment inside his house to question him, right? Get him onto our turf. And so Jim did that. And I went and made contact with the roommate and introduced myself and I asked him, did he know Carol Ann Bailey? He said, yeah, she lives here. And I asked him when was the last time he'd seen her. And he told me it had been a couple of days. So I asked him to come on in if he didn't mind and talking to us about the case. And remember, at this point, really, we didn't know who did it. And I brought him in to the sheriff's office.
So we get up to the detective's office and we have different interviewing rooms. And so we had Russell in one of the interviewing rooms, and then we brought in the roommate who was at a separate room there. So at no time were they able to talk to each other or even be able to see each other for that matter.
They didn't know the other one was there.
So we ended up first going in with Russell and asking him the basic questions. Was Carol Ann living with you? When was the last time you've seen her? Were you with her, particularly that evening of May 31st? And everything he got was denial. And it was, I hadn't seen her. I wasn't with her. I was at work.
Right.
Just every reason in the world that he was not with her. But then we went and talked to the roommate, which had a completely different story. The roommate confirmed that she was actually there that evening and that they had been arguing for several hours.
Right.
So that immediately conflicted with what Russell Gross was telling us.
Yeah, so he straight up lied, which is self-preservation, right? He doesn't know what we have or don't have. So he's going to deny. And now classic work, lock him into his statement. And then we go to the roommate and he's like, no, she was there. And they were fighting and they were raising hell and it went on for a long time. And then what did he say, Jim?
At that particular point, he ended up saying that
the argument
stopped.
He didn't hear any more noise. It was quiet.
He didn't hear any more noise. It just got very quiet, and that he actually thought they went to sleep. So he tried to go to sleep himself.
And we're talking about a single wide trailer, y'all, with a couple of bedrooms in it. It's not that large of a residence.
It's basically a bedroom on the left side, a bedroom on the right side of the trailer with a common living space that you consider the living room.
Right.
So you could see the opposite side by just looking out your door.
Right.
And he heard them arguing for hours, and then it just got silent and stayed like that for a couple of hours.
Right.
So
and then he saw
at early morning hours,
like several hours after the fighting had stopped.
So he had said that the argument and whatnot stopped about 10:30 11 o'clock, somewhere in through there. And he said it was approximately 1:45, 2 o'clock in the morning, somewhere there. He wasn't 100% sure on the time, but it was definitely by 1:30, 1:45, somewhere through there. He saw Russell Gross carry Carol Ann in his arms out of the trailer and put her inside the truck, in the cabin of the truck.
And he was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
he didn't know. He didn't come out straight out and say that she was dead at that point, but he knew shit wasn't right.
So Russell Gross then drove off in his truck to return a short time later. So the drive distance...
returns by himself.
By himself. And the drive distance from that residence to Buddy Ellis Road, where the body was found, probably about 10 minutes.
Max.
10 minutes max. So it's not really that far out of the way. So he returned a short time later and had gone to his room. The roommate then told us that they get up for their job. They both work together. And he went over there to Russell, who normally is up and ready for work at this point. And Russell was just laying there in his bed. And the roommate asked him, like, come on, we got to go to work. And the one thing Russell kept saying is, man, she's gone.
Yep, she's gone.
She's gone. And he goes, what do you mean she's gone? Man, she's gone. Wouldn't give the specifics as to how she was gone, just that she was gone.
Yeah, I mean, and the roommate knew Carol Ann did not leave the residence under her own power. He saw Russell carry her out. And let me tell you this, on both of these guys, these aren't drug dealers or anything like that. Russell had that trouble some years before, but he wasn't a frequent flyer or anything like that. And he had a job and he worked. I mean, like I said, he came from a good family. I think he was a lot older now and he worked pretty hard.
He did. And, his earlier troubles with the sex offender happened, I believe, back in 1990, which...
Yeah, I mean,
the time that this happened, he was probably in his early 40s. I think he was 42 or 43 years old, somewhere in through there. Carol Ann was about 47 or 48 years old, if I remember correctly. So when he kept making his comment to the roommate about she's gone, when he did, the only thing he got a little bit more specific on was he said, man, she left. She gone. And it was the only thing, and he stuck to that. And even when, a day would go by, 2 days would go by, the roommate had asked him, where's Carol Ann? I haven't seen her. And the only thing he would respond back with is, she's gone. So at that point, we knew between Russell giving us a false statement already and that information from the roommate, it was time to really go back in and really have a nice interview with Russell Gross to get the truth.
Right. And so, we're locking them in to audio recorded statements, right? And so as the case developed and we found out what the roommate had seen, etc., then Russell's sitting over there on ice, if you will. And so we take the recorded statement from the roommate and then go back at Russell.
So we get back in there with Russell and we sit down and been advised already of his constitutional rights.
Right.
And we pretty much tell him that your story is full of shit.
That's it.
And we know it's full of shit. And start give him a little bit of information to see what he starts giving back to us. And one of the things we told him was that where her body was found was an old state training center.
On state grounds.
On state grounds.
Not really there.
And, it not have been a good spot to put a body down next to the training facility like that. And he doesn't know, is there video cameras?
Right.
What is it that we know that he doesn't know?
Right.
And we let him know. We know a lot more than what you think, and we know the answers to the questions we're asking you.
Right.
So you need to start telling us what had happened.
And basically, your story is full of holes, doesn't add up. We have evidence way beyond a reasonable doubt that you're involved and you know what happened, and either you are a fucking cold-blooded murderer or shit got out of hand and you can explain yourself. But if you continue to lie, then we're going to do your ass and you're going to prison for the rest of your life.
And so we had a good cop, bad cop situation going on there, if you will. But one of the things we were able to do was that statement we collected from the one lady that was working that ended up catching that additional shift into the night. And we knew the truck. And so we when we had this conversation with Russell, he's either going to be viewed in two ways. He's either going to be viewed as a cold-blooded killer, as what he just stated, or did it just get out of hand and it wasn't meant to end that way, and it did.
Right. And then, he denies and still denies whatever, but this is over a period of hours, y'all. It's browbeating at its best. And every time he'd go to deny, I'd get a little more bad cop with him, if you will. Like, you know what? You're full of shit, man. And every time he'd go to deny, I'd cut him off as this. Hey, motherfucker, if you're going to lie to me and insult my intelligence, then it's best you just don't say anything at all, because I might just have to get upset.
And he started to see that a little bit. And, I started letting him know, in a way, it was, Russell, we know you didn't just dump her body and take off and run.
Yeah,
I know you stayed there for a little bit. We know you did.
I have a witness that saw you.
And, well, we didn't let him know it was the witness right away. We gave him just enough to know that we knew a little bit. Right. So to trigger his memory, we know that you didn't just dump her body and take off. We know that you stayed there for a little bit.
What Jim was doing is setting it up, giving him the human out, if you will, right? Going at him from the bad cop angle. I'm tired of him and lying, etc. And Jim is like, you know what? You could have just threw her out in the ditch like a piece of trash, but you didn't do that. You stayed with her for a minute. And not only that, you laid her in the grass gently. And he said, Jim, it was beautiful. And he was like, that just tells me that you love her, man. And it tells me that you love her. At this point, we're doing whatever we have to do to get a confession. And we already had great shit through the roommate statement. We got him lying about it. I mean, roommate sees him carrying her out, etc. But really, now it's about closing the deal. We want to, even if he fucking lies about how he did it or tries to minimize his involvement, Jim just wants him to change his statement back and put himself there.
Absolutely. So I was talking to him about you cared. We know that you love her. You laid her down there. You stayed. You didn't just jump into your vehicle and just take off. You stayed there for a little bit.
And I was
you
like,
were thinking about something.
And I was like, I don't know, Jim. I think that's fucking bullshit. Otherwise, he would just tell us the truth, right? I mean, if he truly cared, I think you're full of shit, Jim. If he truly cared, then he would just tell us the truth that it was an accident or something. They argued and got out of hand or whatever. But I think this motherfucker is just a killer.
Yeah. And
Jim's like, no, he took too much care. He loved her.
And at this point, I ended up getting a little bit closer to him. And I remember sitting partially on the desk and I put my hand on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And I told him, and I reiterated again, you could have just dumped her and took off. You didn't have a care in the world, but that's not what you did. There's a story here.
That's right.
And you need to tell your story because this might be the only opportunity you have to tell your story. So you're not viewed as the guy that is just a ruthless killer who didn't care and just threw out this body like it's a piece of meat and meant nothing.
Right.
This is your chance, Russell.
And then you were like, you loved her though, didn't you, Russell? You loved her.
And then he ended up saying that he did love her.
When you ask him that several times, he starts nodding in the affirmative. And I'm like, yeah, we got this motherfucker now. But go ahead.
Yeah. So he starts changing his story a little bit. And, he ended up telling us that he was with her that evening. And they did have an argument. And the reason for the argument is that she went and spent his money. He got paid recently.
That's right.
From work. And she took the cash that he had received from work and went out and bought some drugs with it. I believe she was buying some crack cocaine or some meth or something along those lines.
I think it was crack, and wasn't the fact just that she bought the crack, but she split for a period of time. And when she came back, she was broke.
She spent all his money on drugs and went on a couple-day just smoking crack and binging. And just when she finally didn't have any more money left and there was no more drugs to purchase, she showed back up at the trailer. And Russell was pissed.
You got Russell. He's a hard-working dude. He's not making much money, y'all. But he's getting up and going to bust his ass every day. And Carol Ann wasn't. And he gets paid. And she comes in and she steals his shit, man, and then splits. Now, I mean, it'd be one thing if she at least would have invited him to come along for the party, right? But she splits and goes with who. It doesn't make it a case for murder. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that, I mean, she takes his money and he's living paycheck to paycheck, certainly. And when she comes back after like 2 days, doesn't have a nickel to her name. He's got no money to buy groceries and he's got to work all week again. He was pissed.
He was definitely pissed. So he ends up stating that when she came back to the house, they immediately started arguing about it, why she took his money, what she spent it on, where she been the last few days. And it just continued. The argument continued to ensue for, as the roommate had stated and Russell stated, it went on for about a good hour to 2 hours of fighting back and forth. And then he said that she actually at one time grabbed a pocket knife and was threatening him with the pocket knife. And I guess put the knife down at one point and they continued to argue. And then she came at him and he ended up grabbing her with his hand around her throat. And he said that he squeezed so hard that he actually heard a crack.
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
And
he's tearing up at this time, actually, when he's saying this to Jim. I'm the bad guy in this. I'm distancing myself away from him. Jim's closed in on him, getting the juice. I mean, they're having a moment, right?
And so he says that he squeezed her so hard that he heard the crack. And he said it was the look in her eyes. He knew that something was wrong, but he couldn't stop squeezing because he was so angry still with her spending the money and this argument that had now gone on for quite some time, that he, even though he knew he had done some damage to her throat in some sort of way, he still could not stop squeezing.
That was crazy.
And he kept squeezing until her body started to go limp.
I was like, holy shit.
And then what he did is he said,
go Jim.
What he said he did at that point was she brought her down towards the ground where she got on her knees, and then let go where she laid flat on the ground face down. And, he said at that point he didn't really know what to do. He thought she was going to wake up.
Yeah, his ass hurts. He
didn't know. He said he sat in the bed for a little bit thinking about what all had just happened.
I believe that. First of all, you squeeze somebody's neck to the point where you hear the bone break, then... And when he said, I know this is the truth, and he said he looked into her eyes and he knew something was wrong, that's because whenever you choke somebody to death, you burst the blood vessels in their eyes and they turn red. It's particular hemorrhaging. And so he's looking in her eye. Let me tell you something. Strangulation is a very intimate form of killing. You don't just strangle somebody in 1 second, right? I mean, you got to apply that force and listen to that person. And, look them in the eyes while you're breaking their neck and literally squeezing the life out of them. And like he said, he just kept squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. And I was like, holy shit.
And so once he finished describing what he had done and the position he had her in, I needed to take that opportunity to get him to describe exactly how it was that she was laying when he put her down. And the reason for that is because I wanted to prove the lividity.
That showed that her body was in that position, which did not match the position on Buddy Ellis Road. The lividity was on top.
Correct. And so he actually described to us the position that he had her in, which would match up for the reason why she had lividity. And specifically asked him, did you move her at any time once you put her in that position? He said, no. How long was she like that? And he said she was like that for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
He was hoping she was going to wake up.
Yeah.
Then asked him, if you knew something was wrong, why didn't you get her any type of medical attention?
Yeah. That's where he knew he was full of shit, because he knew he'd killed her already.
He already knew he killed her, and he didn't have an answer. He just kind of looked at us with that. He'd shrug his shoulders and wouldn't respond as to why he didn't get medical attention for her.
That's because he knew he broke her neck.
But had left her like that for a couple of hours.
Now, I believe wholeheartedly the dude had remorse, but I also wholeheartedly believe he knew he killed her. And then he's like, holy fuck. She be dead. And what am I going to do now? So
I had asked him, Russ, what did you do next? I mean, you already knew that you heard the crack. You looked in her eyes. You remember her body going limp, and you couldn't stop squeezing because you were so mad. And then after you laid her down, you sat in a room for a couple of hours. What were you trying to do? And he said he was trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah.
And he wanted to wait for his roommate to go to sleep.
Yeah.
So he picked her up and put her in the truck. And then he drove off. And he said he got off the interstate and chose the Buddy Ellis road because it was dark over there in that particular spot. So he kind of gave us two different situations. One, he picked it because it was a dark, isolated area. But he said that when he stopped the truck and got her out, walked down into the ditch and laid her down, he said he put her in a position and wanted her laying down like that because if somebody were to spot her, they could get her help if somebody could provide some sort of help.
Yeah, that's a load of shit.
Complete load of shit.
Maybe he didn't want her to lay out there for days on end and would want somebody to spot her, but he knew she was dead, and still he's trying to minimize, saying, oh well, maybe she was alive. I left her out there. But look, he knew Buddy Ellis Road. He's born and raised right there in the area, and he knew it was a dead end road, and he knew it was a good place to dump the body. But although I'll give it to him, he didn't just dump her. I mean, we worked so many dump bodies. He actually laid her out almost like in funeral style. And that's one of the things that struck me when I saw her on the ground that day, was she was laid out with care. Her legs were straight, arms up. You had to lay her on the ground gently to get her in that position, or set her down and then pose her in that position. That's how straight she was.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't just drop her. He definitely had to have squatted down at some point and laid her down gently
on state ground.
And he said too that he stood over her for a little bit, which matches with that statement we had where the lady had observed the red truck and somebody standing there in the ditch for a minute before they left. He said that he stood over her for a minute, telling her that he loved her and that he didn't mean for this to happen.
Yeah.
But that he loved her.
I believe that's probably true.
And after he said his goodbye message to her, he then got in his truck and drove to the end of the road, which is a question I asked him as well. When you got in your truck, which direction did you go, or what did you do? And he said he drove down because he thought Buddy Ellis Road would actually continue. He didn't know that it actually would dead end right there.
Right.
So he drove to the end, realized it was a dead end, turned around.
No pun intended.
And then drove out of Buddy Ellis Road over there to Walker South Road, where he continued his way back to Denham Springs.
Yeah. So that's it. We got him. And Jim absolutely got the juice, if you will. That's what we call it. And we went back and make sure the roommate, we had him locked in and everything. And we took a really good recorded statement and made Russell repeat everything again. And then we actually took him back to the residence with us. So
we did. So for Woody and I, when you're looking at this case overall, he's trying to say he didn't mean for this to happen. It was an accident. But when you look at the whole thing, I mean, he knew that he took her life, but never once provided any kind of medical help for her.
Right.
And then went and tried to dispose of her body.
Right.
instead of getting her medical help as well. So now he thought about that for a few hours of what to do before he drove over there and laid her out, and then never called for any help for her, never reported her missing,
Right. Even
anything at all.
even after, he knew there was a body found and all that. He didn't even say,
That's murder.
yeah, exactly. He didn't say, claim it or say it was an accident or whatever. I mean, he strangled the shit out of her.
He did. And so it wasn't one of those situations where you can sit there and claim self-defense or hopefully get a manslaughter or something like that.
Right.
That's murder.
Well, that's straight up murder. But one of the good things we did on taking him back to the residence, we got him to sign a voluntary consent for us to go in and bring us in to the bedroom. And guess what wasn't in the bedroom where they were arguing the whole time? There was no pocket knife.
No pocket knife to be found.
No knife to be found. So we had him on that, and we were slowly sucking away his self-defense.
And, there were still some more investigative things for Woody and I to do. When we were inside the residence there, was collecting the evidence out of the residence where
Right.
he laid her down,
Right.
where there's some blood on the
That's
carpet,
exactly right.
His truck. That's all part of the crime scene as well, because, when we had his vehicle impounded,
Right.
and the crime scene went through it, they did find some of her hair in there, which wouldn't be unusual, but they also found some blood droppings in there as well.
And like on little Caitlin Adele's case, when Mark Lewis moved her body, they had the blood and some hairs, but they were on the lower end. Like, he set her down in the seat. I mean, she wasn't sitting straight up. And so the vehicle was processed, and then that blood and hair, of course, was DNA matched to her. When you choke somebody to death, that dry blood that Jim first saw when he got on the scene, you are going to almost always have some bleeding from the top of the throat where the blood vessels burst out like that. And that's what it was. So that was on the floor, and it was in the vehicle, and which just locks up the theory and his statements that, I choked the shit out of her and left her on the floor, which matches the lividity from when she was found, and then transported her in the vehicle. We have the witness see the vehicle.
And then the one more piece of this puzzle, remember, she had that defensive wound.
That's right.
On her hand where she had that fingernail that was pulled back. So we actually checked on Russell on his body for any type of scratch defensive wounds. And what did we find, Woody?
Scratches.
Found some scratches. So we got photos of that.
Yeah.
It was on her right hand. It was found on the left side of his body.
Right. And he was cooperating with it, y'all. We didn't have to get search warrants or anything for it. He did it all freely and voluntarily after being advised of his Miranda rights, and he could stop at any time. But he's, at this point, I think he was trying to still hold on that he would have some hope of a self-defense theory. But what he didn't realize was everything we were gathering was making that null and void.
So after we finished our investigation at the house and had him in handcuffs, we went to go book him into jail on a murder charge. The news media was there
Yeah.
at that point as we walked him into the jail.
A good old-fashioned perp walk.
The perp walk.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Russell, did you kill her? And then the reporters lined up, right? And you get to march them through. And
yeah, march him through, and he makes a statement that he didn't mean to kill her.
Of course, he might have been told ahead of time the media is going to be there, and they're going to ask you, did you do it? And you need to tell them what you told us. It was an accident, and that you love her, etc. Right? And of course, he did it.
Exactly what he did.
Hook, line, and sinker. And y'all have heard me use that tactic before, and just go so far. So when later on, naturally, when defense attorneys get involved and they try to suppress the confession and all that stuff, well, you know what? He told the media, suck on it.
So he was booked into jail for murder. And eventually, as the case went to trial, he was convicted.
Yep.
And is serving life in prison.
Yep. For the murder of
Carol Ann Bailey.
And the disposing of her body on state ground. So it was a really good case. Jim did a hell of a job. And sad, always sad domestic violence. And I don't care if she spent this whole year's worth of money. It's not worth getting choked to death. I know I'd rather catch a bullet or a knife or whatever than have somebody choke me to death. And it's just a bad way to go. And I feel bad for her. And that sweet mom that she had, she's probably not even living anymore. And the sisters, I mean, these victims, no matter what lifestyle they lead, they all have family members. They all have somebody that loves them. And it's always sad, no matter who it is. And even if you're a shitty person, then nobody deserves to be choked out like that.
Definitely not.
So it was a good case, dude. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing it with us. And
my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, well, it'll be the first of many, y'all, because Jim and I have lots of really, really good cases. And this is, like I said, my first ever live in-person interview. I did one before with Karen Ortolano over the phone. But Jim and I are going to be doing more cases, and we've got some crazy cases. This one, I mean, it's a murder, right? It's, it's not a serial killer or anything like that, but it's a brutal murder, choking somebody to death like that. But we've got some cases.
Yeah, we do.
That you can't make this shit up. We'll be bringing to you in the future. And a lot of those are going to be more of a sexual nature. Some of the ones that jumped in my mind. We won't get into that today. But my brother from another mother, I appreciate you, y'all, and you're talking or you're listening to a true American hero and just an all around straight up great guy, Jim the Hitman Rathmann. I love you, brother. Thank you.
Love you too, man. Thank you.
And everybody, I appreciate y'all for listening and liking and sharing. And as always, I'm Woody Overton, your host of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. And don't let me catch you down on Murder Bayou. Peace. Okay, y'all. I want to give some shout outs to our Patron members. And y'all, I really appreciate each and every one of you. Can't read all of you today, but I'm going to try to read maybe half, and we'll do the other half of the list next week. And this is your monthly shout out on Patreon. It's just one of the ways that I can show how much I appreciate you. But let's see. I want to start with our newest patron members, and that's Miss Sue Switzer. Miss Sue, I really do appreciate you. I thank you for being a patron member. You're awesome, and certainly it helps. So thank you. And then Randy, I don't have your last name, but I do appreciate you joining. I do appreciate you joining and supporting us through Patreon. You're awesome. And Miss Melanie Millspa. I hope I'm saying that right, Melanie. It's MILLSPAUGH. Miss Melanie, I really do appreciate you. Thank you so much. You help us out, and I appreciate it. It's awesome. And Miss Lauren Simmons. Miss Lauren Simmons, thank you so much. You are amazing. Thank you. And Audrey Rachel Smith, thank you so much for joining and taking the time to support us. So, y'all, I want to tell you this before I get more into the list of patron members. Next Friday, we're going to drop a hotline episode, and it's going to be with myself and Jim, the Hitman Rathmann. So after you heard this episode on Friday, y'all go use your hotline number and call in and say or ask anything that you want from me or Jim or both of us, and we're going to answer that, and that will be the episode next Friday, and it's going to be fun. We always get great questions and comments, etc., and even a few jokes here and there. But that's one of your patron benefits, and all patron members as a perk. So it's y'all's show next Friday, and I appreciate you. We continue on with the list, and we go with Miss Christine Hernandez. Miss Christine, I love you. Miss Christine is invaluable, y'all, dream team and everything else. Much, much love. Much love. And she's our promo woman. Thank you, Christine. I appreciate you supporting us in all the ways that you do it. And Mr. Robert Malin. Robert is a cool guy joining us with Patron, and we've been conversing back and forth, and real cool guy. And Robert, we appreciate you supporting us through Patron. You're awesome. Jamie Lee. Jamie, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Your support really helps us. Tanya Hano, my longtime dear friend and former dispatcher. She's just awesome. Tanya, I love you. Thank you. Ryan Horan, the promo man, I love you, brother. Ryan's going to be doing some stuff for us on YouTube. Y'all check it out. And Becky Andre, Miss Becky, you are amazing. Thank you so much for all that you do and supporting us through Patron. Karen Travels, another Dream Team member, and just a love. Karen Travels, I appreciate you and thank you so much. And Alicia, who I don't have your last name, but you've been doing it for months and you supporting us, and I appreciate it. And I thank you so much for doing it. You're amazing. And I have another one-namer, Angie. Angie, who you are. You've been doing this for several months now, and I thank you so much. You really help us out. Aaron Ashwood, same thing. Been doing it for at least 3 months. Aaron, thank you for supporting Real Life, Real Crime through Patreon. I appreciate you. Miss Lisa Chase, also been doing it several months. Lisa, thank you so much for doing it, and I appreciate you. And I hope y'all are using some of your patron benefits. Miss Kathy Morris, you're awesome. Thank you so much for your continued support, and I appreciate you. And Ellen Smolinski, Miss Ellen, thank you. You're awesome, and I appreciate you. And Stacy Spalding, Stacy, thank you so much. I appreciate it. You're a vital part of what we do. And Emma Flavel, Miss Emma's been doing it for a long time. Miss Emma, we thank you for being one of our original patron members. And Miss Tina Benton, who I worked with for many years and is a retired law enforcement professional. She's one awesome lady. And Miss Tina, I haven't picked up those peppers yet, but thank you for them. And thank you for being a patron member. You are amazing. Rosa Ortega, Miss Rosa, you've been around the whole time, and I appreciate you, and I thank you so much. Rika Ketchum, our beautiful friend from Arizona, who we met at Crime Con, one cool lady. Rika, really do appreciate you. Tanita Anthony, Tanita, we love you and appreciate you, and thank you so much for supporting us through the Patreon. Carolyn Pettit, thank you, Caroline. I'm assuming it's Caroline, so Caroline Pettit, thank you so much. You've been doing it for a long time, and I appreciate you. And maybe the best dog in the world from Dallas, Texas. I know who you are, and you're always active in the groups and making funny comments and stuff like that. And I appreciate you, and I appreciate you supporting us through Patreon and by being interactive, etc. The Firebird, you know I love you, lady, and I appreciate you and all that you do. She's also a Dream Team member and integral part of what we do at Real Life, Real Crime. Brandy Elliott, another long-term, awesome patron member and an awesome group member. She participates almost every day. Brandy, we love you. Thank you. We have Courtney. Again, Courtney, I don't have your last name, sweetie, but I love you and I appreciate you and I thank you for doing it and supporting us. Alex, I don't have your last name, but I appreciate you and I thank you so much. You are awesome and amazing. Tiffany Leggett. Tiffany, thank you so much. I think I did you last week, Tiffany, but I'm doing you again. I love you and I appreciate you. And Tiffany Gongre, Gongre. Tiffany Gongre. I hope I'm saying that right. It might be Gongre. I don't know. I'm not sure. But I love you and I appreciate you. Thank you for supporting us. And Miss Valerie, thank you for being a patron member. You are amazing. Andrea Stoner. Andrea, thank you. I love you. Shayla Bourgeois. Miss Shayla Bourgeois, the good, strong Cajun name. Thank you so much for supporting us, sweetie. I appreciate it. And Meg Mihaly, I guess that's how you say it, Mihaly. Meg, thank you so much. I appreciate you. really do. And John Laudermill, y'all have heard me talk about him. He was my supervisor in uniform patrol, and then we went on. I think we were probably partners in detectives at some point, but I know we worked a lot of great cases together. And he will be helping me co-host the show in the future. John, love you, bro. Thank you for supporting us through Patron. And his beautiful bride, Deetra Laudermill. Deetra, thank you, first of all, for putting up with John. And secondly, for supporting us through Patreon. You are truly amazing. And Miss Califia, thank you. You've been around you're an OG Patreon member, and I appreciate that. And I mean, it really helps us out. Thank you so much. And Rachel Franzen, my dear friend, if you don't have that baby, I don't know what's going to happen, but you're looking beautiful, and we wish you all the best of health and success for you and your family. Thank you. Stacy Henderson. Stacy, I love you and I appreciate you. You're awesome. Thank you. And Jenny Wyatt from the Golden Triangle, my jokester. She is definitely an OG and a Dream Team member and posts in the group every day. Jenny, thank you for everything. I love you. Amy Derrick from 1096 Crime Chicks. Y'all go check them out. They're back up and running. And they just did a Jean-Benet Ramsey update, and they're working on some other stuff. So, Amy, we love you and appreciate you. Tanya Truel, Blue Line Graphics. Tanya, thank you. And they're the ones that do all of our merch, y'all, all our shirts, etc. Best stuff ever. Thank you, Tanya. Cassie Wallace from Bowling Green, Kentucky, Dream Team member, funnier than hell. It has a lot of knowledge when it comes to podcasts, etc. And Cassie, I love you. Lauren Simmons. Lauren, thank you for being a Patreon member. Audrey Rachel Smith, thank you, and I appreciate you. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us. Miss Raven Moran. Miss Raven, I love you, and I appreciate you, and I thank you so much for supporting us through Patreon. And Jessica Kennedy, thank you. We're glad you joined. I see you posting in the groups and stuff, and you're awesome, amazing, and thank you. And Casey Elizabeth, thank you, Casey. I appreciate you for doing it and supporting us. You are amazing. And Miss Ashley Falcon. Miss Ashley, I appreciate you, and I thank you so much for supporting us and joining us through Patreon. To end the list, last and not least, Miss Jen Sawicki. I bet you thought I forgot about you again. And her daughter, and Jen, is from Arizona and a longtime Patreon member. And we love you and appreciate y'all. We haven't heard anything out of y'all in Arizona in a little bit, but hope you're doing well, Jen, and you truly are a trip. And still need to get together and talk about that case. When you're ready, hit me up. So I'm going to wrap up the Patreon for today. Y'all want to talk about 2 more podcasts real quick. And one of them is Crimes Unlimited by Rachel Bell. Now, let me tell you about Rachel Bell. Okay, so let me tell you about Rachel Bell in Crimes Unlimited. The relatively new podcast, Rachel Bell has like degrees in every type of psychology, and she's a true criminal minds specialist, right? And this lady knows killers, and she knows serial killers, and her mother is instrumental in the field, back with Court TV and Crime TV, etc. And the doctor, Nader, that she first interviewed on her episode about the BTK killer, interviewed the BTK killer over 60 times in prison. So I don't have a promo yet to play for, but I will play for when it comes out. But y'all go check her out, Crimes Unlimited, Rachel Bell, and give it a like and a listen and subscribe and let them know that Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast sent you. And the other podcast I want to tell you about today is Blood, Sweat, and Fear, hosted by Eve Lazarus. Let me introduce you to Eve now.
I'm Eve Lazarus, and I'm a reporter and an author based in Vancouver, British Columbia. I host and produce Blood, Sweat, and Fear, the story of Inspector Vance. Vance wasn't a police officer, as his title suggests. He was the first forensic scientist to work for a police department in Canada, and certainly the first to carry a badge and a gun. Vance was so good that he was known as the Sherlock Holmes of Canada, and his forensic skills were so advanced that in 1934 there were 7 attempts on his life by criminals afraid to go up against him in court. Each episode follows a different major crime that Vance helped to solve. You can find Blood, Sweat and Fear on Apple, Podbean, or your favourite podcatcher.
And that's Blood, Sweat, and Fear by Eve Lazarus. Y'all go check them out. Give them a listen, subscribe, blow them up on their social media, and let them know that Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast sent you. Okay, a couple of last announcements. I just want to tell all my fans I love you. It doesn't matter if you're patron or not, and I appreciate each and every one of you. You're amazing. But I ask that you continue to like and share and subscribe if you haven't, and leave us a review on iTunes if you haven't, y'all. I think we have like 270 reviews on iTunes, and we have just on our private crew page on Facebook, we have over 1,600 members. So just if y'all would go there and give us a review. I don't care if it's 5-star or 1-star. We just want to see some reviews, and I appreciate it. But thank y'all for what you're doing, and I appreciate you. And we have the podcast awards, y'all. It's www.podcastawards.com. You put in the information. We're nominated in 3 categories. The first one is People's Choice. Second one is Society and Culture. And the third one is Drama and Storytelling. If you feel so inclined, please go over there and give us your vote. And check out all our social media, 3 Facebook pages, including the one I was just telling you about, the Friends, Fans, and Crew, KREWE. It's pushing 1,700 members this week, y'all. It's our private group, and it's awesome. Of course, we have a regular page, Real Life, Real Crime. Then the page I was telling you about, Real Life, Real Crime, Friends, Fans, and Crew, KREWE. And then finally, our Real Life, Real Crime Lanyap page. Lanyap meaning something bonus or extra. And you go there and our fans interact, and we're doing a cookbook, and you just post whatever you want. If you make stuff, you sell it, or hobbies or whatever. I've done some really cool swap outs with some people, and just check it out, y'all. It's cool. And Instagram, Twitter, we're on it. Check us out. And YouTube, we're on our YouTube is really growing. And so y'all check that out. You go to YouTube and type in the search box, Real Life, Real Crime Podcast, and it'll pull us up in all the videos, etc. And it has all our episodes, but we're adding more videos and stuff like that. And that's it, man. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening. And next week, Patron members, use your hotline number, call in your questions or your statements, your shout outs, your bitches, your gripes, or your compliments. But my guest will be Jim the Hitman Rathmann, who is a true American hero. He is a decorated war veteran. And before he became an American hero that way, he was a hero as my partner in Detectives. And we're going to be doing a lot of episodes together. So y'all call in questions from me or Jim, or the combination of both of us. And next week, it'll really be a fun episode. I appreciate and love each and every one of you. And until next time or ever, don't let me catch you down on Murder Bayou. Peace. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney prior to and during questioning. If you can't afford one, the court will appoint one for you. You understand your rights?